Hi, welcome or welcome back. My name is Ari, and earlier this month you probably saw a couple of videos where I was talking about the 20 books nominated in the Goodreads Choice Awards for fantasy. I did read all 20 of them and I made a couple of videos about them, but I also read the top 10 sci-fi nominees, and that's what this video is. So technically I read 12 books. There were 2 books that did not make the top 10 that I had read earlier in the year. But in this video, I'm mostly talking about the top 10, and I am going to go from 10 to 1 in my order and let you know what I thought of all of these books and if any of them are still worth you picking up later. So first things first, let's mention the 2 books that I read outside of the top 10, and the first one at number 20 is Machine Hood by S.B. Divya? Sure. I actually DNF'd this book. One of the major plot points of this book was the legality of a husband deciding that his wife could not have an abortion. She knew that they could not afford to raise a child and chose to get an abortion, and she was not allowed to without her husband's permission. And I just didn't want to read about that, so I DNF'd that. Outside of that, the writing was good, so if that's content that you're comfortable reading, you may like this book, but it didn't seem very popular. Next up at number 12, I did read A Desolation Called Peace by Arcady Martin. This was the second book in the Texacalan duology. It's space opera, a political space opera, so if you like politics and in space, then you'll probably like this. I thought the duology was really good, and I hate like politics in space, just the writing was really good, so totally worth it. Now, in outside of Goodreads order, and now we're going to my order. At number 10, I put The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. Now, this book, when I read the synopsis of it, I was like, that doesn't really sound like sci-fi, that sounds like a domestic suspense. And you know what? It's a domestic suspense with sci-fi elements. Basically, this woman is a biologist, like a genetic biologist, and has discovered cloning, typically for medical reasons, and there is a clone of her, and her husband has an affair with her clone, and then the clone calls her one day and is like, yo, this man's dead, come over here and help me. And then you have like domestic suspense things. So if you like domestic thrillers where a bunch of shitty people cheat on each other and they're not like people you really want to root for, then you'll probably like this book. I don't like books like that, and I don't care about cheating spouses. Like, that's one of my least favorite things to read about. So I gave that one a 2-star, but I can see a place where people would like that. It just wasn't for me. That was the only 2-star I gave. Now we're into the 3-star range, and this next book at number 9 is The End of Men, and it's right on the verge of a 2-star. Like, I was thinking real hard about giving it a 2-star, but I ended up giving it a 3-star because the writing was entertaining. I didn't really like, I kept interested in it. I didn't feel the need to put the book down. I wasn't bored reading it. I just had like, the subject matter was missing, and this one's kind of sad because I would have, like, if you would have given me this list before I started reading these, I would have predicted this would be pretty high up, but it's missing a lot. So basically the premise of this book is that there is a pandemic hitting the world, a virus that targets men. Women can carry it, but they don't get any symptoms, and then it kills 90% of men. And it's highly contagious because it survives on surfaces for 36 hours, and then women can transmit it and never show symptoms, and then men don't show symptoms for 2 days. So highly contagious, everybody's getting it, and all the men on the planet are dying, basically. I had a couple of problems with this. First off, a book about a pandemic in the middle of a pandemic is a little bit on the nose. And now that we've lived through a pandemic, we know that a lot of the ways people and scientists are behaving in this book are not at all accurate to how they would have actually behaved. So that's like plot wholly, because we know how this actually turns out because we're living through it. Then the whole book feels like it's lacking diversity. All of the book is told from the perspective of like a lot of women. Like basically this pandemic's over and this journalist or reporter or whatever has gone through and collected the stories of important women that have helped save the world basically through this pandemic. And the thing is, all of the women in this book are, for the most part, like white women with husbands that they're married to and children, specifically boy children. So I kind of get that because those are the people who are going to be hit hardest, but it feels like it's lacking diversity. There are women of color in this book. There's one character who's a lesbian, but she's fucking awful. Like, she's a horrible person. So it's like, oh, you could be a lesbian, but you're gonna be a horrible person. And then, like, it's like the idea of an intersex person or a trans person is just kind of like a throwaway chapter at the end, where it's like, oh yeah, we went through this whole book and we forgot to mention the existence of trans women. I guess we should do that. So, and then like the one black woman is a single mother instead of being like happily married. So it just feels like a touch racist. It feels just strongly lacking diversity. And then it's just one of those things where it's like, I feel like this could have been done so much better, and it wasn't. Also, the overall purpose of this book seems to be like, it would be really sad if all the men in the world died, but the world would really be a better place if all the men in the world died. So, yeah, take that where you will. I don't really know that I recommend this to anybody. I would like the premise of this book, but done better. This is just not done well. But it was really easy to read, so. At number 8, this one I'm gonna have a lot less to say about it. It's Light of the Jedi, and honestly, I'm just not a huge Star Wars person. Like, I'm sure Star Wars is great, it's just not for me. I didn't have any like desire to read this book outside of this project, and like I don't have any attachment to the Star Wars universe. What I did pick up from this is the author is super long-winded. The opening scene of this book was 115 pages. It was absurd. I was like, oh my god, this doesn't need to be this long. Lightsaber battles are way cooler in a visual medium, and I'm pretty sure the Republic is a cult and Jedi are religious fanatics. And that's pretty much all I took away from the book. It's not bad, and if you like Star Wars, you'll probably like this book. I'm just not a Star Wars person, so it was okay, but not great. And now we're at number 7, and we're already at 4 stars at number 7. The sci-fi list just blew me away this year. I had so much more success with sci-fi than I did with fantasy this year, and I'm kind of shocked, but I'm really glad I read it because of that. At number 7, I put Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, and this follows 2 young, like early 20s young men in a political setting. You have Janan, I think is his name, and Keem. Hard for me to pronounce, but they are in an arranged marriage because of political reasons. You have a like home planet and then outlying planets, and somebody from the ruling family of the home planet has to marry somebody from all of the outlying planets for like a treaty. And the treaty is renewed every 20 years, and the 20 years is coming up in a month. Janan was married to a prince, and then that prince died. So he, like, a week after his husband died, is marrying another prince that he's never met before. And then it's the two of them, like, working on a relationship, and then trying to, like, save this treaty, because there's, like, a bunch of background mysterious stuff going on. This is kind of like a mystery type book, so if you like mysteries, you might like this. If you like queer mysteries, you'll probably like this. And it does contain one of my least favorite tropes, which is miscommunication. But if the miscommunications trope is going to be done, this is the way to do it, because one of the characters has an abusive past, and so they are unable to clearly communicate with their partner due to years of physical and psychological abuse. It still doesn't make me like the miscommunication trope, even if it is done well in this. So it is a 4-star, and I did really enjoy this story, but it's on the low end of the 4 stars because of that miscommunication trope. But yeah, queer love story, mystery, outer space, politics stuff. It hits all those points, and I do highly recommend this for anybody that it sounds interesting to. Next up at number 6 is A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. Now, Becky Chambers is one of my all-time favorite authors. I adore her Wayfarer series, and this is a novella that she wrote in a new series called Monk and Robot. And basically, in this universe, like 100 years prior, there was a robot uprising, and the robots wanted, like, freedom. They were enslaved because they were robots, but they have feelings, they have personalities, and they wanted the freedom, and they were granted that freedom. And they went into the wild, never to be heard of again. And then a tea monk, who is a monk who basically travels around the, like, outer edges of society with a tea cart, and he's basically a counselor. So he serves tea and talks to people, and they can, like, get out their feelings, work through their problems, and just sit in a calm place, talk to somebody who cares but really doesn't have a stake in their lives. And this tea monk runs across a robot, and they begin a relationship and have a conversation. I did really enjoy this book. I love Becky Chambers' like calm writing, her gender acceptance, and just like the idea that if people were just decent and kind to each other, that the world could be a fantastic place. Overall, the book felt too short. Like, there wasn't enough. Like, I needed more. I wanted this to be a full-length novel, not just a novella. And so that's why it's at 6 and not higher up. But highly recommend. I might say wait to read this book until the rest of the Monk and Robot books are out, so you could just blow through all the novellas and get the whole story in like one go. Next up, at number 5, I put Remote Control by Nnedi Okorafor. This book is very interesting. It takes place in Africa, and a girl finds like a rock that has fallen from space, and somehow this rock gives her the power to kill both humans and electronics. And she becomes a mystical being in Africa who just kind of walks around and travels around, and she's like 7 years old, but she just kind of walks around, and people feed her, they clothe her, and then they send her on her way. If somebody is suffering, she'll help them die, and if somebody gets angry or attacks her, she can defend herself with her ability to kill, and she is known as Death's adopted daughter. And this just kind of follows her on her like adventures and how you have like the base story from her perspective, but you're also seeing how her actual life becomes like spoken word mythology. And it's an like, I don't want to say it's a nice story because it's like death related, but it's like just interesting and very straightforward, kind of melancholy, and just like a nice read. And it's also short. It's a novella as well. So if you're looking for just like an interesting alien space sci-fi novella set in a futuristic Africa about a young girl just trying to survive when she kind of kills everything she touches, this might be for you. I thought it was a great read, very interesting. I've read some of Nettie Okorafor's other books with audiobooks, and those were all good, so I assume that this is also a very good audiobook, but I did read this physically. Anyway, this is another book that I very, very much enjoyed, gave it 4 stars. If you like the premise, I highly recommend it. Next up at number 4, I put Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This is a very interesting novel that I don't necessarily think is for everyone. It is a study of the human condition and what makes us human from the perspective of an artificial intelligence, or in this book they're called artificial friends. And these are like androids that are created to be companions to children. And we have the entire book from this artificial friend's perspective. So you've got a lot of human stuff, like depressing, everyday, problematic human stuff going on in the background. But Clara, our main character, doesn't really understand it because she's not human. So there's a lot of things that we know are going on, very sad things, very problematic things, but we don't ever see the whole picture because it's not a picture that Clara could see. And it's just a calm, sweet story with a melancholy background that you like would miss if you're not really paying attention. So I do highly recommend this one, but go into it not expecting answers because you're not gonna get them. Next up at number 3 is Fugitive Telemetry, which is very hard to say fast, and I had to do it a couple of times, by Martha Wells. And this is book 6. It's book 6 in the Murderbot Diaries. So I love Murderbot. I read the Murderbot Diaries books simply for Murderbot's personality. The plots in these books aren't really the strongest, but Murderbot and their personality, or its personality, is like everything. You read these books literally for Murderbot. So I do recommend trying out All Systems Red. It is a novella, it's like 100-something pages, very quick read, and if you like Murderbot's personality, keep going. If you don't like Murderbot's personality, you are not gonna like any of the rest of the book. The plot throughout all of these books is not strong enough, but I will keep reading all of the Martha Wells novellas about Murderbot just because I love Murderbot. So Fugitive Telemetry was a 5-star for me. Like I said, all Murderbot, but the lowest of my 5 stars. Next up after that is kind of surprising to me, and that's Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And I'd seen the movie The Martian, but never read any of his books, and I wasn't particularly interested because I don't know, space doesn't really do it for me all the time, but I love this. This is also another character-driven type of book, and I don't want to say a whole lot about it because, like, the plot twist and stuff like that are just well worth it. Basically, we have a man who wakes up on a spaceship. And he doesn't remember his name, he doesn't know what he's doing, why he's there. And throughout the story, we get flashbacks of memories and then what's happening in the present as he like slowly starts to remember who he is and what he's doing out there, in an attempt to save the world, which is, you know, the Hail Mary thing. The only criticism I would really understand of this book is apparently the character in this book is very, very similar to the character in The Martian. So if you think like recycling a character's personality is bad, you may not like this book. But I liked the guy's personality in The Martian, so I was fine with like a recycling, because the whole story is like wildly different than The Martian. It's just the personality that has been recycled, and it was a great personality, so worth recycling. But I highly recommend this book, and now I want to read a lot more stuff by Andy Weir. And my number one book, surprising me because I don't even think I had ever heard of it, it had no plans to read it before this list, is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. And this was a wild fucking premise, and I didn't know how it was gonna work going into it, but it was so well written. Basically, this follows a woman named Suzuka Shitomi, who is a world-class violinist, and she trades her soul to the devil to just be a famous violinist, right? But at the very last moment, she changes her contract, and now in order to save her soul, she has to present 6 or 7 replacement souls that will go to hell. Like, she has to teach 7 students as 7 replacement souls who will go to hell in her place for her soul to be free and for her music and violin skills to be made public again. And she has basically 7 years per soul, so 7 times 7, so 49 years to collect all of these souls. She is already given 6 souls, and she has 1 year left to present the final soul at the beginning of this book. And her souls need to be special. And the student she chooses for this final soul is a young woman named Katrina Wynn. And she is a young trans girl who his father has been abusive to her. She's a runaway. She is very poor. She does sex work to survive, and she's just all around mistreated and sad. And the bond that forms between Suzuka and Katrina is just beautiful. Suzuka, from the first moment of meeting Katrina, just instantly accepts her and treats her like a person, which is all Katrina wants, is to be treated like a person. That's all most of us want, is just to be treated like another human being who deserves life and deserves to make your own choices in life. And one of the early conversations that was so sweet was Katrina is like, doesn't know what to do with Suzuka just treating her like a person. And she's like, Miss Satomi, I'm trans. Do you understand that I am trans? And she's like, yes, I know. Who cares? You're an amazing violinist. That's all I care about. But she does, that isn't all she cares about. She cares about Katrina being treated like a human, and she goes out of her way to make her feel cared for and loved. Even though she's trying to get Katrina to make a deal with the devil and forfeit her life, she's still wonderful to her and shows her the only love that she's really ever experienced in her short, like, 17 years. But that's wild enough. Like, the deal with the devil, wild enough. But there's another character named Lan Tran, and she is a space alien fleeing a devastated universe who runs a donut shop in Los Angeles. How do space aliens fit in with deals with the devil? You are gonna have to read it and find out, and oh my god, do I highly recommend it. It's beautiful. Her writing is very similar to Becky Chambers, but not quite as hopeful and kind as Becky Chambers. But this is an amazing book, and I highly recommend it to anybody. It's bizarre, but so well told. Anyway, that is my feelings on the top 10 sci-fi. There will be a big graphic on the screen right now showing the actual placements in the background and then my placements on top of it. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you think of them down in the comments below, and I will catch you tomorrow in another video. Bye!